Markets are now joined by Sven Richter. He's Managing Director of Frontier Markets at Renaissance Asset Management. Sven, good morning. Thanks for joining us today. The weekend events in Libya, how have they changed your assessment of the region and how it's going to perform?
The events in Libya have not really changed my assessment that much. I mean, prior to the weekend, Libya was looking really like either Gaddafi would prevail, in which case I felt that sanctions would be imposed and Libya would be shut off, or that there become sort of a lower scale civil war sort of stalemate. And I think now the sort of lower scale stalemate civil war is the slightly more likely scenario, but it doesn't really change where Libya was heading, and it doesn't really affect the larger oil issues in the world, because Libya is not a massive producer of oil compared to other issues. However, the issues in the wider region are still of concern, and the concern that there's something might happen to Saudi's oil supply is what I think is driving oil prices and is the biggest concern at the moment.
Do you really think that Saudi Arabia's oil supply will be affected, or is that a real long shot?
No, well, I don't know if I can say it's a long shot, but I don't think it'll be affected. But there must be a risk at the moment. There have been some demonstrations in Saudi. The government in Saudi has made some concessions, so we know that they have some concerns. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's something that we must be aware of, and we must consider the implications if it does.
What about Bahrain? What about Angola? What about Kuwait? Because these are countries I know that you look at closely.
Yes, they are. I mean, Kuwait in itself is not problematic in terms of oil. The wider implications in terms of Kuwait is who gets involved in Kuwait. If the Saudis get involved in Kuwait, will it prompt the Iranians to also get involved in Kuwait, and will that lead to a wider issue within the region? However, if you look further south into the rest of Africa, we see in general that the countries are stable, and we see many countries like Nigeria and Ghana benefit from the oil price. So with everything in the world, there's certain countries that are losers and certain winners in this environment that's happening at the moment.
But it's a time, Sven, as we know, where event risk has risen. It's not just what's happening in the Middle East and North Africa, what's happening in Japan, and what's going on within Europe with the sovereign debt crisis. I mean, these are three big events happening at once, which is quite rare, isn't it?
It is quite rare that all three happen. And, we started off with the debt crisis, then we had the North Africa, Middle East issues, and of course, out of nowhere came the earthquake in Japan. And all three of these have implications. For the oil price, if you want to look at the Japanese longer-term implications, is where are we going to go with nuclear power? Will we, over the next few years, see more demand for gas, oil and coal, because we see more power generated from those three options rather than from nuclear? It's a bit early to tell at the moment, but there can be longer-term implications.
And what are the longer-term implications for your investment strategy? I mean, Frontier Markets is your sort of expertise. How have these three big events affected your thinking when it comes to investing?
Well, it's actually made us very positive longer term. We realize that we're going through an area where this year we think there'll be some uncertainty in terms of the politics, and it might even flow through into the early stages of next year. But longer term, when we look at a country, we see countries that really develop are the countries where as many people as possible are involved in the economic affairs of the country. So where you have the freedom for people to partake and start businesses and create their own opportunities in terms of the economy, you find the countries grow. And we think that the Middle East, North Africa and the rest of Africa will come out of this stronger in terms of that.
Thanks very much, Sven. Middle East, North Africa, West Africa will come out of this stronger. Sven Richter there joining us today from Renaissance Asset Management.